Welcome to the clinical scenarios, and this is your case number 27. Here we have a 2-month female infant who is born at term, brought to the office of a well baby visit. Okay. Her antenatal and birth histories are unremarkable. So she is not a preterm infant. We do not have any antenatal history, any infection, any fever history, rashes history, so nothing significant there. Her developmental milestones are also normal for her age. So because when we are talking about a neonate, there are so many things that are going in our mind side by side. Was she a small for gestational age baby or preterm baby, having the weight less or age less, maybe having the risk factors for the ROP, or there was some torch group of infections, anything remarkable there, or some developmental delay, failure to thrive. So there are so many things. So they are solving our query one by one. Ophthalmoscopic examination reveals a white reflex in the right eye. So I think this is the most significant part of this question, that you have a white reflex in the right eye. So that means now you have to solve this question with respect to leukocoria. Leukocoria in the right eye. Rest of the examination they are saying that is normal. So what is the most appropriate next step in the management of this patient? So what are you thinking? Now, as I always say, that you have to approach the patient with respect to its DD. So the most important thing they are talking about here is the leukocoria. Now, what are the things that can lead to the leukocoria? Let's see that. So if you look at the DD of the leukocoria, I can have the congenital cataract in the baby, then I can have the Coats disease, I can have retinopathy of prematurity, I can have the retinoblastoma, then I can also have the toxocara and ophthalmitis. Toxocara and ophthalmitis. So these are the things that you have to keep in mind when you are like analyzing a case of leukocoria. Now, what if the leukocoria is occurring in a very small child, 2 months old child, who is having developmental milestones normal and at term baby, not a preterm baby. So there are very less chances of ROP here. Okay, and there is no significant history during the antenatal period. So what should you think? So always remember that whenever you are having leukocoria in a very small child, then you have to consider it, diagnose it as a case of retinoblastoma until proved otherwise. So consider it to be a case of retinoblastoma unless proved otherwise. Now why we follow this dictum? Because among all these DDs, this one is most severe. The most severe is the retinoblastoma. So we always have this thing in mind, that this baby must be a case of retinoblastoma, or this is the most important DD that we want, that we should be ruling out, because other things can wait. Retinoblastoma will not wait. And it's always better to overdiagnose than underdiagnosis, because underdiagnosis can even lead to death in the babies. So that is very important. So always remember this dictum, that you have to first take it as a case of retinoblastoma unless and until proved otherwise. Now, second important thing, there was no antenatal history. So most probably it is not congenital cataract, because you know what are the causes of congenital cataract. If you look at the causes of congenital cataract, I can think of maternal causes or I can think of fetal causes. So maternal causes may, there is no history of TORCH group of infections, any radiation exposure, any fever with rashes, any drug that his mother is taking, any nutritional deficiency, so nothing is there. If I think of the fetal cause, so no history of anoxia, any hypoxia, preterm birth, hyaline membrane disease, respiratory membrane disease, any galactose intolerance, failure to thrive, hepatosplenomegaly, cataract with convulsions. Then I do not have any history of mental retardation, mental delay, so that we can think about the Lowe syndrome, oculocerebrorenal syndrome. So I do not have any kind of evidence of the cataract here. I do not have anything due to which I can suspect the ROP, because this baby was well, there is no history of prematurity or high oxygen concentration, nothing of that sort. Now, as far as your Coats disease is concerned, so this Coats disease may you have to remember that this is unilateral, more common in boys, plus the age at which they are manifesting is the first decade. So it is very less likely that this baby is having the Coats disease. Moreover, in the Coats disease, like we have the idiopathic vascular telangiectasia. Idiopathic means you do not know the cause. Vascular, related with the vessels. Telangiectasia, you have some malformation in the vessels. Now, due to the malformation in the vessels, we have lot of inflammation, and due to that lot of inflammation, what you are getting? You are getting exudation. That is responsible for the whitish pupillary reflex. But then there will be, you know, due to this exudation, secondary glaucoma, inflammatory glaucoma. We will have the complicated cataract also. So again, this is not the case. And Toxogera endophthalmitis. If I talk about endophthalmitis, so this is a very severe eye. We do not have any history of infection during the antenatal period, any evidence of sepsis in the baby. So there are related symptoms that should be there, or any other thing that is giving a clue towards the endophthalmitis. So this is also not there. So our dictum was that consider it as a case of retinoblastoma unless proved otherwise, and you are not getting any evidence of any other thing. So suppose we are thinking that this is a case of retinoblastoma. This is the baby who is presenting with the unilateral leukocoria. Now, retinoblastoma can be presenting in so many ways. We have a lot of presentations there. See, this is the whole chart of the presentation, how a baby having the retinoblastoma can be presenting. Baby can present with unilateral leukocoria also, bilateral leukocoria also, secondary glaucoma, buphthalmos, because you know retinoblastomas can also have the glaucomatous stage. How it is going to take place? See, when lot of tumor cells are present there, so these tumor cells will be released and they are going and blocking the trabecular meshwork. So there can be glaucoma. Second important thing, when this tumor is leading to the detachment of retina, which kind of detachment? Exudative retinal detachments are common with the exudation. So what is happening? Because you know we have got the detachment here due to the collection of the cells. So it is the exudative retinal detachment which is common in the tumors. So they are going and they are pushing the iris lens diaphragm anteriorly. So we have narrowing of angle of anterior chamber. That can also lead to the angle closure glaucoma. And thirdly, when this growth is going towards the vitreous cavity, they are causing the compression of the vortex veins. What are vortex veins? So you have got the veins which are present in the uveal tract like this. We have supratemporal, supranasal, infranasal, infratemporal. So these veins are compressed, and it is these veins which are responsible for the drainage of aqueous humor. So whenever you have the compression of these veins, then that can also lead to the glaucoma. That is why it is considered that the first most common presentation of the retinoblastoma is the leukocoria. Then the second most common presentation is the squint, and the third most common presentation is the glaucoma. Now why squint? If you look here, what is happening? Due to the retinoblastoma, the baby will also have the poor vision, right? So there will be poor vision in the baby, and you know that at the time of birth, these babies are like hypermetropic. So they have a problem in near vision. So what they are going to do, they will have a tendency to see the near things more accurately by accommodating. And whenever you accommodate, you tend to converge. So this baby has more tendency to converge. Because this baby has more tendency to converge, so therefore there is a tendency of the esotropia, convergent squint in the baby. So we have leukocoria, we have squint, we have poor vision, and we also have glaucoma. Then this retinoblastoma is also a part of Muscuret syndrome. It is also a part of the Muscuret syndrome. What is the meaning of this? There are certain, tumors which have the tendency of presenting as inflammatory lesions. So here also we have iris nodules, we have pseudo-hypopyon. So it is not actually pus, but you get the picture as if it is pus or the exudation. So this is also considered to be a Muscuret syndrome, but you know that actually it's a tumor. So when you see it from the closed eye, it looks as if this eye is swollen. So it gives a picture which is very, very similar to the orbital cellulitis. And you know, orbital cellulitis is the most common cause of unilateral proptosis. So sometimes what happens, this baby is coming with this kind of a picture and thinking that it's orbital cellulitis. Maybe there can be a risk of cavernous sinus thrombosis. You admit the patient, you start with the workup, and then you came to know that no, picture is something different. The moment you open the eye, you see a whitish pupillary reflex. So it's not orbital cellulitis. And slowly and gradually what can happen? It is an invasive disorder. You know, retinoblastoma is a tumor. So you are going to get the signs of invasion also. So now we know that most probably this baby is going to have the retinoblastoma. So on that terms, let us see what they are telling us we can do. So let's see the options now. They are saying that first is covering the affected eye. So now consider it that this eye is having retinoblastoma. It is having, whitish pupillary reflex, it has a squint, it has a poor vision and glaucoma. Will you cover this eye? No. Exactly no, because already this eye is having poor vision. So if this eye is already having the poor vision, right? So there are high chances of this eye going into the amblyopia. So there is a poor vision, this eye can go into the amblyopia. Now if you are covering it, then again there are more and more chances of this eye to go into amblyopia. If one eye is amblyopic and the patient is not using it, okay, so what we are doing, we are rather covering the other eye so that the patient is stimulated or forced to use this lazy eye. So obviously there is no treatment of retinoblastoma by covering that eye. Then second, covering the normal eye. Now covering the normal eye, this we do in cases of the comitant squint. This is the thing that we are doing in cases of comitant squint, where the squint is not due to the paralysis, rather the squint is due to the high amount of refractive error, or there is high amount of difference of the refractive error between the two eyes, or the patient is using one eye preferably because of uniocular microscopes, or we have the dense lens opacity, dense corneal opacity in one eye, and constantly patient is using one eye. So obviously we are not going to cover either of the eye. Then they say referral to an ophthalmologist or the watchful waiting. Are you going to wait in the retinoblastoma? No, we cannot do it. Retinoblastoma is a highly invasive tumor, and there are high chances that retinoblastoma can be associated with other tumors. Which tumors it can be associated with? Like retinoblastoma can be associated with the pinealoblastoma. The most common tumor associated with the retinoblastoma is the pinealoblastoma. Then when the patient is disease free, in the disease-free patient, again there are chances that the retinoblastoma can be associated with a tumor. Then it is osteosarcoma. So again we have chances that the tumor is associated. Okay, then it has a chances of spread also. The most common spread is by the optic nerve, scleral rupture, proptosis. Then even we can have the blood spread. So through the blood it can go to the liver, and this becomes the most common cause of the death. This becomes most common cause of the death of the patient. So can we afford to do the watchful waiting in the retinoblastoma? No. So obviously at the earliest we have to refer this patient to an ophthalmologist. Ophthalmologists also have to be very urgent. Okay, we have to do a fundus examination, dilated fundus examination, indirect examination also. You have to look whether there is a unilateral involvement, bilateral involvement, because bilateral involvement is present in 25 to 40% of the cases. We have to prevent one eye that is affected. You have to look at the size, whether you have to give the tumor destructive therapy, we have to use cryo, we have to use laser, the radiotherapy, or we have to do the enucleation, or we have to try with the chemotherapy. So there are different things. So we have to do the total workup of this patient. I will have to do the B scan of this patient. Now CT scan we can do to see the calcification, but usually we do not prefer the CT scan in cases of babies. Why? The reason is like CT scan can increase the metastasis there. So we usually do not prefer it, and mostly we can get the foci of the calcification on the B scan also. So it's not really advisable to give the radiational exposure to the babies because it could be done by the B scan. Then we have to do the MRI. For the MRI, you want to see the optic nerve involvement, as optic nerve is the most common route of spread. So I have to see whether it is unilateral, or it has gone into the other eye, or it is in the process of going into the other eye, because your final treatment will depend upon that. We also do the plasma LDH levels. And once you have decided the mode of the treatment, or you are doing the enucleation, you have to take the tissue from the optic nerve, you have to send it for the biopsy. You have to see whether you have Flexner Winter-Steiner rosettes, or Homerite rosettes, pseudo rosettes, florets. So there are typical things that are going to happen. So obviously we cannot cover this eye, we cannot cover the other eye, we cannot rely on wait and watch. at the earliest, you have to do the ophthalmology referral and take the necessary steps. All right. In case of any doubt, you can also always ping me up on any of the social media platforms. I am always there for you and I'll be more than happy to help you the way I can. Okay, you can visit the Facebook page, the Facebook group. We have a huge family in the Telegram group and the Facebook group there, and we are trying to conduct daily quizzes so that you tend to revise some small topic of ophthalmology daily on the prior notice given topic, so that you know in tips and bits you are able to revise and be in touch of that. We are doing the clinical scenarios in this COVID time so that we can give you some help from the clinical point of view also, because you know most of the people are restricted and they are not able to go to the wards. So do write to me, how do you like these clinical scenarios? Share your feedback, your suggestions. They are always welcome and they help us in improving. I want to help you at my best so that you come up with flying colors. Thank you and happy ophthalmology.